In previous videos, we've talked about how Kathleen Kennedy has disastrously mismanaged the Star Wars franchise, and about how there is a civil war within Lucasfilm. But what we haven't talked about is how the media has been covering these events. Within the last several months, 3 articles have been published, one by Forbes, one by The Hollywood Reporter, and one by The Atlantic, that chronicle the relationship between Disney and Lucasfilm in the recent year. Why is it, in a year in which there is almost nothing of note happening with Lucasfilm or Star Wars, that the media is covering Lucasfilm so heavily? There are some who suggest that the purpose of these articles is not merely to provide news on the subject, but to set a specific narrative. In the Forbes article, the author harshly criticizes Disney's management, citing the firing of Gina Carano, for example, as a public relations disaster. He also criticizes Disney for having an inconsistent policy on its rules of conduct, as they did not fire Pedro Pascal for an action similar to the one Carano was fired for, and also stated that Disney was hypocritical for declaring it stands for values, while turning a blind eye to atrocities occurring in China in order not to offend an important market. In the Hollywood Reporter article, it describes how Chapek quickly reorganized the command structure of Disney and consolidated power around himself. And in the Atlantic article, the writer talks about how The Mandalorian has breathed new life into the failing Star Wars franchise, and that its creator, Jon Favreau, can lead Star Wars back into success. Veteran Hollywood producer Cameron Pasha believes that these 3 articles have the express purpose of setting the narrative that Kathleen Kennedy has run the Star Wars franchise into the ground, and that her time as president of Lucasfilm is near an end, and that Jon Favreau will be the one to restore Star Wars to a position of success.
We've seen a 3-act structure play out in the last several months with 3 articles. We've seen the first act was that Forbes article that came out saying Bob Chapek, he's not in control. That's a really bad situation. What they did with Gina Carano is bad. So that act 1. Act 2, we see a Hollywood Reporter article come out several months later saying Bob Chapek is taking control. He's butting heads. That's act 2. And act 3, we see this article come out, which is essentially saying Bob Chapek has taken control, and the old world, the failed version of Star Wars, is over. And what's amazing about this article is that it actually lists the protagonist and antagonist of the story. The antagonist being Miss Kathleen Kennedy, the protagonist being Jon Favreau, right? And it actually lists them by name. And while it skirts around Miss Kennedy, it clearly lays the blame on her camp without naming her as the actual problem, even though she's linked in it. And then Jon Favreau is presented as the solution. To me, that's the fulfillment of the movie.
Cameron goes on to explain in greater detail the significance of the 3rd article by The Atlantic.
And now we're seeing Act 3 here. So the reason Act 3 here, which is now the general populace article, The Atlantic, which reflects the intellectuals and the East Coast cocktail party crowd. Why is this coming out? I believe it's because we've gone through Act 3, which is the deal is done. My belief is that this article has come out because they have reached some kind of settlement with Ms. Kennedy to have her move on to the sunset. My instinct is what they'll do is she will retire with much glory and fanfare and much praise at the end of this year from Lucasfilm. She will continue on as executive producer on Indiana Jones. And they will focus all their attention on how great Indiana Jones is going to be under her leadership. So they're giving her the cover to move on from Star Wars, with dignity. And so that is why I believe this was put out there at this time. It's because the matter has been resolved legally. It's all been signed away. And now they have to prepare the industry, not just because what were the stages of it? There's problems at Disney, stage 1. Bob Chapek is butting heads at stage 2, right? And stage 3, which is this article, is what is the solution to the problems? It is this other vision and this other gentleman, which is Jon Favreau. So they've now set up the successor vision, which means that the movie has come to an end. And now we're seeing the sequel being prepared, and we're seeing the finale and the climax. And now the next movie is going to be where Mr. Jon Favreau is going to take Star Wars on The Mandalorian. Whether he receives an official title, Lucasfilm, I don't know. I don't care. This article has established that it is his vision that's going to be the new movie moving forward for Star Wars. And so it's brilliant Hollywood storytelling playing out in front of us, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And none of it is being done in a way that is obvious to the public. And that is why there's been some controversy in the fandom in particular, because these events are being done in true advertising fashion to manipulate the populace with something it does not fully see and does not understand. This is sleight of hand. And so people are expecting that the magician will reveal their tricks and are getting upset when that's not how it plays out. But that's sleight of hand. And so that's what we're watching here. But the basic question that you've asked, Andre, which is why now, cannot be answered unless we understand that there's something that has happened behind the scenes. And anyone who believes nothing is happening behind the scenes has no explanation for these series of events that don't have a rational reason to happen without something happening behind the scenes. So that is my view. I think this article represents the end of the journey for Miss Kennedy. And now, because Jon Favreau is named, and to my memory, I don't recall that Jon Favreau and Mandalorian in the previous two articles that came out in the news media were really emphasized or even mentioned. Here he is mentioned, and this entire article is about how the Mandalorian gets right what everyone else has gotten wrong, and this is going to be the way that Disney and Lucasfilm are going to be moving forward. It's a brilliant three-act structure. Mr. Chapek should have become a screenwriter, in my opinion.
Some strongly believe that Kathleen Kennedy, despite her massive failures in managing the franchise, will remain in her position as president of Lucasfilm for as long as she wants, and that she is, in fact, impossible to fire. Now you might ask, why is Kennedy, who has effectively turned a billion-dollar franchise into a million-dollar franchise, so safe in her position?
And the reason for it is very simple, because Ms. Kennedy, for all of her mistakes recently, has decades of experience and contacts who could become a problem for Bob Chapek and everyone else at Disney. All she had, if she in any way feels humiliated in this process that she knows was coming for quite some time, she will call somebody at the Hollywood Reporter who's going to do a huge expose on how Disney is a male sexist culture that's pushing out a female, and then have Bob Chapek fired by the board for PR purposes. It's very easy. She's got a gun on them. And so the gun they have is that our shareholders are unhappy. So how do we resolve this old OK Corral Mexican standoff?
Why wasn't Kennedy fired after Solo for losing Disney so much money?
If this was a purely economic situation, she would have been let go after Han Solo, after the Solo movie failed. But it's not an economic situation, because at that level, it's not about economics. It's about personalities, what I call the club or the cocktail party circuit. It's about these people that are essentially the feudal lords of this town. And you don't take out a feudal lord by firing them, right? Because then you have a war that's going to bring down your fiefdom. So this is how the game is played.
To placate Kennedy, Chapek allowed her to proceed with the production of the still untitled Indiana Jones 5, being given carte blanche to do whatever she wants.
She's been given Indiana Jones 5, and I'm told that she really is in charge of it, that she can do whatever the hell she wants with it. So
Spielberg is not there. If Spielberg was there, she wouldn't be in charge of it. But he's not there. So of course she's in charge of it. Who else in this production has more power than her right now? Nobody. So of course she's in charge.
I think Harrison Ford's doctor has more power since I heard that they've suspended
production for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Cameron and others believe that Kennedy's contract will not likely be renewed when it expires this year. But there are others who claim to have inside information who believe that it will be renewed. But if Kennedy's contract was going to be renewed, Disney would have made a formal announcement of it some time ago. There's almost no chance that Kennedy would resist the opportunity to upset her detractors by doing so. Some believe that the fact that there has been no announcement means that she will not be renewed. Also, the production of Indiana Jones 5 has been pushed back an entire year. There are some who believe that Chapek is aware of how terrible this film is going to be, and that it would cause irreparable damage to the still valuable IP. That he is allowing this project to languish, giving the general movie-going public the opportunity to learn details about the film's objectively terrible plot, which will arguably weaken Kennedy's reputation as a competent producer. That he is doing this in an effort to run out the clock and never let the film be released, or finished for that matter. If she is let go, there won't be a formal announcement that she's gone, and she won't be frog-marched out of the Lucasfilm building.
Kennedy, there's not going to be a formal announcement that she's gone. There's not going to be any frog march. There's not going to be, in fact, they're going to probably, I was told, my sources told me that they were planning on showering her with some awards and, letting her have
the kiss of death stuff. I mean, there is no other way this can play out. This is the only way this was ever going to play out. It was going to take a long time to have Miss Kennedy move on, and it was going to be done in such a way that it's not direct and obvious. And third, it's going to be done in such a way where she is heaped on lots of praise. She moves on.
Whichever way this goes, whether Kennedy's contract is actually ended and she's sent on her way, or if she's simply sidelined from Star Wars, as many believe has already occurred. These 3 articles, particularly The Atlantic, seem to indicate that Star Wars will be in better hands going forward.
Will it free up Filoni and Favreau to do better work?
If, as we believe, Ms. Kennedy is ended and the Lucasfilm story group is denuded down to nothing, if any of them even remain, then yes, I believe it will. I mean, I personally believe that's what the Atlantic's article was all about, because it named him and it embraced his vision and was so clear that his vision, goes back to the early 80s original Star Wars, right? It's the best Star Wars since 1983, right? That's what that article is saying. And so I do believe this is going to free them up. I think, again, the process will not be overnight.
I'm hoping that, unfettered, we will see a next season of The Mandalorian better than the other 2.
But I think the Atlantic article shows that not only is he not resigning from Star Wars, he's been anointed publicly as its savior. And the system has been told, this is your new story. Star Wars was misguided and Jon Favreau is the new hero. That is the official story now. And so we are the birth of, we're seeing the rise of Da Vinci and Michelangelo. We're at the birth of a new time.
And I really am very glad that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are there. I think that they're doing a great job. I think structurally...
Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like. If you didn't, give it a dislike. Be sure to subscribe and even do that thing with the bell. And remember, folks, no matter where you're going, there you are.